In the last 5 years, my team and I have managed tens of millions in ad spend and generated nearly $500 million in attributed revenue for e-commerce and retail brands. We've audited hundreds of 7- and 8-figure accounts, and we always see the same 3 issues that cap their ability to scale, no matter how good the brand or the product is. By the end of this video, you'll know the 3 real reasons why you aren't able to scale. You'll know how to fix your technical structure on Meta and Google, how much creative volume and diversity you need, and how to clean up measurement so you can trust the numbers that you're scaling from. So there are 3 reasons why your ads aren't scaling. Diving into number 1, this is technical account structure. So fundamentally, your account isn't set up to acquire new customers. How can you start looking at fixing this? How do you know if technical account structure is currently a limitation within your ad account? There's Google, and then there's Meta. Now, we're not going to go too detailed here. We're just going to point out the most simple basics that most people get wrong. And so it's probably likely that right now you have at least one of these issues in your account that you can look towards fixing. On Meta, there is too much spend going to existing customers. Now, the way that you can see this is just doing an audience segment breakdown by hitting the breakdown button, then clicking audience segment, and you'll be able to see how much spend is going through to existing customers and new audiences. Most accounts have way too much going to existing customers. Now, what do I actually mean specifically by way too much? Generally, if you are in fashion, you want no more than 25 to 30% of your spend going to existing customers. If you are not in fashion or CPG, and so you're in an industry that naturally doesn't have a high return rate, or more specifically, doesn't have good 90-day and 365-day LTV, then you really want your existing customer spend to be at less than 10%. If your spend is currently higher than this, you are overspending on existing customers. Now, what is the next thing on Meta regarding technical account structure? It is the attribution setting that you're using on your campaigns. Now, most people don't think about this. They just use the default attribution setting and on they go. The default attribution setting is 7-day click or 1-day view. Now, the issue here is in the 1-day view. It means that if a user gets served an ad and only one single pixel of the ad actually needs to appear on the visible screen space of the end consumer, then Meta can claim the purchase as long as it occurs within 24 hours of that impression being served. What you end up with here is a bunch of over-attribution from existing customers. You end up with a bunch of over-attribution from traffic coming from Google, and you end up with a bunch of over-attribution from any other core sales channel that's driving people to the website. And so your ROAS numbers in platform are skewed. Your campaigns are optimizing towards these kinds of people, which you don't want. And so it ends up causing a ton of issues with actually being able to scale the campaign and having visibility into how well the ads are actually performing. Now, the next one is having a testing structure. Now, this sounds really obvious and self-explanatory, but most people don't have this in their accounts. There's not a system in place that's facilitating the continued introduction of tests and then conclusions coming from those tests to inform future decisions. Now, this is primarily occurring across creative. And so you want to be able to get creative into an account in a way that you are getting feedback so that you can iterate on that creative over time. Did images just not work across this particular concept? We should go and double down on videos. These videos are performing really well. Let's go and make 10 new hooks so that we can get more longevity out of them. Most people are just making a bunch of creative, not very thoughtfully, throwing it into large campaigns and hoping for the best. And so there still needs to be continuous testing around the way that the account is being structured. We do not structure every single account the exact same way. I think that's a big mistake because there are nuances within each particular account, as well as each particular business, that lends itself to slightly different priorities and therefore a different structure to meet those priorities. And so it's important that there's also an approach to continuing to optimize the structure within the account to get better performance. If you've been using the exact same structure for the last 3 years, there's probably room for improvement there by introducing some kind of change that's better orientated towards your goals. Now, in terms of what your testing structure should look like, we have tons of videos on this. Just search for Meta best practice Blue Sense and you'll find a bunch of stuff on it. These are the three most common mistakes made across technical account structure, which is that too much spend is going into brand. Once again, how do we define too much spend? You want to be looking at CPCs and impression share. And so go in, look at the impression share on the brand search campaign. If you're above 90%, it means you're likely spending too much on CPCs and you can pull back spend and still maintain a very high impression share. If your CPCs are really above 15 cents, if you have no competitors bidding on you, then you can pull that down substantially. If you do have competitors bidding on your branded key term, then anything greater than 50 cents is too much. That's really going to change industry to industry and how aggressive competitors are, etc. But look at impression share, look at CPCs, and use the combination of those two metrics to know if you're spending too much on brand. The reality is that if you think you're spending too much on brand, you probably are. The next thing is structure. This is more so in the thoughtfulness of the structure. And so most people just throw one PMAX into their campaign or one shopping campaign, or maybe they go, oh, there's a few different product categories, so let's maybe make a campaign per category. But there's not enough thought going into why we're structuring in the way that we are. Why do we need this segmentation? Is it because of different gross margin profiles? Is it because of different product priorities? Is this based on grade A, grade B, grade C inventory? Why are we structuring in the way that we are? Because most accounts, you won't get a good answer. And then lastly, we have GMC feeds. And just most GMC feeds aren't optimized. It's a really easy, quick win to just go through and optimize feeds, but it's really boring and tedious work, which is why most people don't end up doing it, and they end up with a GMC feed that isn't optimized. And these are the three things on Google and the three things on Meta that you should be looking at in terms of fixing your technical account structure. Number two, we have creative velocity and diversity. So there's obviously two components to this pillar on why your ads aren't performing. Number one is usually the most common, which is that people just don't do enough volume in terms of ad quantity. So when we're looking at ad volume, the first question that you probably have is, okay, well, what is your recommendation? How much ad volume should we have? We have an internal calculator that puts this together for us. If you're a e-commerce business, reach out to us. We'll give you the calculator for free. It'll give you the exact amount of ad volume that you should be putting into your account based on your historical ad data and performance. And because that is the reality of this recommendation, is it relatively subjective. We have brands spending $100,000 launching 200 ads per month. We have brands spending $100,000 launching 30 ads per month with very similar efficiency levels. Now, there's multiple different factors that go into that, but one of them is that one of the brand's ads just performs significantly better than the others due to average order value, due to a few winners within the account, etc. So the dynamics change. You can't just compare yourself to someone else and go, what are they doing? We should just copy it. It needs to be grounded in more data than that. With all that being said, I'm going to give you subjective numbers right now in case you're an agency and you can't reach out to us and we won't give you the creative calculator. Here's a bit of an idea. If you're spending $50K a month on ads, generally you want at least 50 net new concepts or net new ads within the account. So I'm not talking about 50 slight variations, taking a couple high performers and throwing a bunch of hooks on there. Generally with like 50 proper new ads within the account. If you're spending $100K a month, with like 100. This somewhat scales with spend. You can actually scale spend more exponentially than ad volume requirements increase. If you're global, if you're in Australia, it actually becomes very tough. It's actually the opposite way. You actually need exponentially more ads because the TAM is so small. But this is a very good baseline for most people. And then vice versa, if you go down to 20K, 20 net new ads a month is a good ballpark. This volume can also come down over time if you decide not to scale. Because if, let's say, you just want to stay at 50K for the rest of your life and you don't actually want to scale volume, well, if you're doing 50 net new ads per month, after about 6 to 12 months of doing this, you'll have so many winners pre-existing within the account that you actually don't need to continue to introduce 50 new ads a month. You could drop this down to 10, maybe 20, and you just have enough pre-existing high-performing winners that you can get away with lower volume. And that's why, once again, you don't want to compare the people, because you might look at someone that's only putting 20 in the account and go, wow, we're doing way too much volume. But the person doing 20 already has 5 really high-performing A-class winners within the account that's driving a lot of the performance. Now, what about the second component here? Diversity. This refers to a few different variables, and we like to break it down into 4. You have angles, you have offers, you have avatars, and you have formats. And this is generally the direction of testing that we want to go in. And so we want to first look at angles. So when we talk about diversity, we're not necessarily saying that you can't just put 100 images in the account. You can, all right? As long as there's diversity in the angles being tested. And so if you have an image going after skincare, and then you have an image going after general health benefits, and then you have an image going after gut health benefits, and so this is obviously all around a particular supplement, then they would be completely different angles. You have multiple different value propositions, and we're isolating each one and then pushing that as the angle within the ad. Same thing applies for offers. And so we could push the exact same thing in all of these image ads. So it could be, let's say it's a skincare angle. So this particular supplement improves your skin. But on this one, we have a buy one, get one, spend $100, get free shipping plus a gift. This would still be 3 diverse set of creatives because number one, they're going to drive to their own unique landing pages with the offer there. Number 2 is they have a very different value proposition in terms of offer, which is going to drive very different performance and resonate with different people as well. We then have avatars. So once again, you can take the exact same message, the exact same offer, but if you change the avatar within the ad, let's say you have an 18-year-old female in one, and then you have a 65-year-old mum in another. Ad, identical offer, same angle, will resonate and be served to very different people on the platform. That's unique, and that increases diversity. And then the last one, and this is what people always think about when they think about diversity, they just go straight to formats, but it's actually the last one that you should really be looking at. Because the reality is that most people go into an account and they test an image and they test a video, and then the video works and they go, oh, video ads is what works for our brand. We need to double down on videos. Wrong takeaway. Videos work for everyone. Images work for everyone. GIFs work for everyone. DPAs work for everyone. The actual format doesn't really matter. It's the angle, the offer, and the avatar. It's really the combination of these 3 things that makes an ad work well, as well as obviously good scripting, capturing attention, etc. It has nothing to do with the format. Because people end up starting down the bottom here because they hear creative diversity and they think, well, we need a podcast ad, we need images, we need professional shoots, we need UGC, we need EGC. Because of that, people end up over-indexing towards what format types are actually working right now, rather than the way more important stuff, which is what angle and positioning of the product, as well as the offering of the product, is resonating with the target demographic the best. But it's ultimately this that needs to get cracked, and then you can go and put it into 25 different formats, and it will generally work everywhere, as long as it's an engaging format that your target demographic resonates with. To recap creative velocity and diversity, general rule of thumb, not very good. If you're an e-commerce brand, reach out to us. We'll give you a way better estimation here. But for every $1,000, 1 net new ad. In terms of diversity, you don't want to be thinking about formats. You want to be thinking through angles first, then offers, then avatars, then introducing formats for diversity. Moving into number 3, the most overlooked, which is data integrity and assurance. Most people hear that, they don't even know what we're talking about, so we'll need to break down the actual definitions here. But I'll give you an example of why this is, in my opinion, actually the most important of these 3 for a lot of brands, particularly 8 to 9 figure brands, is that when you go and look at an ad in the platform and you get a ROAS read, if this is your KPI, if this is your indicator, if this is your data for making decisions within the business, if this can't be trusted, if this doesn't have integrity, all of your decision-making and your feedback loops are now broken, and you're not going to perpetually move the business in the right direction. And the reality that most people are looking at ROAS figures at an ad level on 7-day click, 1-day view, and using this as an indicator for future decision-making within the business, which ends up being the reason why people test creative over and over and over again. They can't find anything that's working because they're over-indexing towards ads that aren't actually very good, but they have a high return on ad spend read because they have a bunch of view-through conversions or because they're sitting at the bottom of funnel and heavy retargeting. How do you know whether you actually have data integrity within your business? Number 1, you want to have a look at the KPIs that you're using to make all of your decisions. And then you want to rigorously put that through the thought process of how much do we trust this particular data point for being able to make decisions moving forward in time? And can we get to the same conclusion by using other data points so that everything is pointing in the right direction? Where people start to get this wrong is, for example, they might look at their MER, and their MER tells them they should scale. But when they look at their ROAS in platform, their ROAS tells them that they shouldn't scale. And then maybe they go and they look at a third-party attribution tool and they look at triple whale new customer ROAS. And this tells them that they should stay where they are. They shouldn't scale. They shouldn't go down. They should just sit where they currently are sitting. And they trust all of these metrics equally. These are the 3 core KPIs that they're looking at within performance marketing. Because of this, there's obscurity on what decision should be made. So one metric has to be prioritized ultimately to be able to make a decision here. And so they might have this hierarchical order of priorities. MER is the most important, down to triple L at the bottom. And so because of that, the ultimate decision is that we scale and we spend more. This is obviously not a position that you want to be in. This is the definition of lacking data integrity. You have 3 metrics that are pointing in completely different directions, and then you just have to wing it and choose the one that you believe is the best to be able to make a decision. What you really want is all of these pointing in the same direction. You want multiple metrics that are confirming each other's decision that should be applied within the business. How do you actually do this, and what do those metrics actually start to look like? When we look at the most important KPIs that exist within an e-com business, the first one is acquisition, MER. This is net new customer revenue divided by ad spend, not total. It's either in a percentage or an X value. Number 2 is we still believe return on ad spend in the platform is very important because it gives us directional feedback on what particular ads and what particular campaigns are driving ROI. Now, we just want to make sure that our attribution settings are correct here. And so in this case, we really want to always make sure that we're using 7-day click, or we're even looking at incremental attribution in the platform. Then as our third core KPI, we will look at 30-day LTGP to CAC. This is calculated externally in a Google Sheet. And this is once again on a 30-day basis. Now, what ends up occurring when you use these 3 metrics in conjunction for making decisions across spend allocation is that they always agree. You will very rarely ever see acquisition MER tell you to do something and ROAS on 7-day click or incremental attribution won't line up with it. You'll very rarely see LTGP to CAC not be reflective of the ROAS within the platform that gives you an indication of decisions. What ends up happening here is not only do you have, in my opinion, considerably better data integrity because of 7-day click, because of acquisition, MER, and because of LTGP to CAC, which is fundamentally one of the best metrics for indexing performance of acquisition over time. Because you have integrity in these 3 metrics, and because they all self-reinforce each other, they all give the same ultimate outcome, you have data integrity and you can actually trust the decisions that you're making within the business. But these might not necessarily be the metrics that you want to use. You might not want to index towards these. They might be a little bit too complicated. But what you want to be thinking about is the metrics that we are going to use, do they all point in the same direction? Because if they're not pointing in the same direction, and that direction therefore doesn't that improve the business when you go and apply the changes, then you lack data integrity and you lack assurance. Most people lack this a lot because there is so many different directions. There's so much data that it's honestly overwhelming as to what you should use. Should we be using hook rates? Should we be using hold rates? Should we be using CTRs? Should we be using CPMs? Should we be using third-party tooling? Should we be indexing just completely towards revenue or profit contribution in the business and nothing else matters? Should we be using acquisition MER? Like so much stuff that you can look at, and there's so many competing theses within the industry in terms of what people actually want to use as their North Star, that it becomes very difficult to actually get strong data integrity and assurance in place. People end up just using way too many metrics to be able to make decisions, and then they all conflate and disagree with each other. Or they're way too far on the other end. And it's like, and I see this in large $20-30 million businesses still to this day, where it's like all that matters is ROAS. ROAS is all that matters. And it's like, well, if ROAS is all that matters, you're going to be in a pretty bad position, because your agency or your internal team is going to just go and spend a bunch on brand. It's going to structure to maximize ROAS, not the actual growth and profit contribution in the business. They're going to just spend a bunch on existing customers. They're definitely not going to use 7-day click. They're going to want 1-day view in there, obviously, because it gives you a higher ROAS number. And then the testing structure doesn't really matter, because the simpler the account structure here, generally, the better the ROAS. And so you actually end up really shooting yourself in the foot if you go too simple here and you just use one single metric. If your ads aren't scaling, it's either because you don't have the right technical account structure, you don't have enough creative velocity and diversity, and you don't have data integrity or assurance within your measurement systems to be able to make decisions on an ongoing basis.